feel the fear and do it anyway. That fear actually excites something in us. It shows us to be real. We're alive, we're present. Yeah, we're scared, of course. And we bring that forth in a spirit of generosity, whatever that looks like. And it's there to serve.
Hello, bold and beautiful souls. Welcome to the Bravery Path, where we embark on inspiring expeditions towards fearless authenticity and self-discovery and boundless potential. I'm your host, Ray, also known as Rachelle. In today's episode, conducting connections from orchestras to coaching through effective communication. We're thrilled to have Peter McCoppin with us, a distinguished leader whose journey spans orchestral conducting, broadcasting, and executive coaching. Peter's career highlights include leading the highest rated leadership workshop in the government of British Columbia, conducting international orchestras across 4 continents, and facilitating 60 team building sessions in the public and private sectors. It's quite the repertoire and background of expertise. So I'm really excited to have you here to share your insights with our listeners. Welcome,
It's
Peter.
such a pleasure. Such a pleasure to be with you, Ray. Thank you so much.
I would love to just start with, can you provide a brief background overview of how you initially ventured into the world of orchestral conducting, broadcasting, and eventually into executive coaching? I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, thank you so much. So to get into music, I had a singing voice as a child, which was identified when I was a young person. And I remember when I was in grade 1, those are pivotal moments. When I was in grade 1, the teacher, we're going to do the morning exercises on what was called the PA system in those days. And we're going to sing a solo. And that song's going to be Jesus Wants Me for a Sunbeam. And Peter, you're going to sing the solo. I didn't even know that I had a singing voice. Anyway, and then from there, I realized I have a singing voice and I have a passion for music, and it somehow becomes my identity. Joined a church choir, eventually became this soloist in that church choir, eventually became an organist, studied organ and music in university. And the path was created. Sang in a professional choir in my late teens, early 20s, started my own professional choir, then had opportunity to do some choral orchestral works with members of the Toronto Symphony who said, "Oh, Peter, you really should study orchestral conducting." And so then from that path, it just unfolded from that place. So I studied, I had a couple of years abroad and then just embarked on that career.
And broadcasting, was that somewhere, where did that enter the mix? I understand. Was it 4 decades that you have?
Exactly. So while I was in university, I listened to a program on the radio. It's always important to be aware of what we say, because it can send a message to the universe. And anyway, it was a program called Afternoon Concert, hosted by Jim Robertson and Ken Haslam. And I said out loud in my car, listening to this program, which I did often, God, I would love to be on the radio, just without any experience whatsoever. Many years later, 8 years later, I was in Edmonton as the resident conductor of the orchestra there. And the general manager of the orchestra said that he was leaving that job and going to work with a record label or something of that nature. He said, "Peter, how would you like to take over my radio program?" "Oh, really?" Okay. So I did. Someone from CBC heard my voice on the radio and said, "Oh, by the way, we need a guest host to fill in for an ailing host of a national program." "Oh, really?" So doing 16 weeks of that, and then it just rolled from that place. Eventually got into television, national television and radio, and it's just all a communication package, really.
Very cool. And then that I imagine there is a word I'm looking for. There's a synchronicity that just seemed to be, or serendipity. You had this openness and then you stepped into the opportunities that presented themselves. So imagine executive coaching. Is there a fun journey to that as well?
Exactly. In the same way, something presents and you say with curiosity, "Oh, gee, maybe I should try that." So for 8 years, I was the music director of the Victoria Symphony and the Charlotte Symphony in North Carolina, commuting between those two, as well as doing some guest conducting in Japan and Australia and China and so forth. Anyway, and so I remember very well after a concert in Charlotte in 1997, number of us were gathered around a table for a supper after the concert, board members and so forth. And one of these people was very senior in the Duke Energy Corporation. And she announced to all of us as we were just sitting down, "Oh, I've just been offered the job of my dreams." Oh my God, how lovely is that? I'm thinking of turning it down. Really? So no one interrupted and said, "How have you lost your mind?" Anyway, the evening wore on and we were very relaxed. And so one person at the table said, "We're perplexed that you'd be in the crest of your career." She was in her early 50s, in the ninth largest corporation in North America, Duke Energy, and you're going to turn down the job of your dreams. What's the job? Why would you turn it down? She said, "The job is Director of Investor Relations." Wonderful. What a great job. 50% of which is speaking in person on behalf of the company. I'm terrified of public speaking. Oh, really? Yes, I'm an analyst. I like to be in a dark room with spreadsheets. That's my comfort zone. So she reached across the table and said, "Peter, have you ever trained anybody for public speaking?" And I said, "No." She said, "I've seen you on the concert stage. You introduce every program from there. You've given keynote addresses and so forth. Would you consider rising to the challenge?" So I said, that was a Friday. And I said, "I'll go home and put something together." I did. It had to be something substantive, not just a feel good kind of thing. Came back to her on Monday and said, "Take it or leave it. Maybe this is of value to you." And it was very specific, how to craft the message, how to find center, and how to deliver the message in very specific ways. Long and short, she took the job. 3 months later, she got back to me. She said she was a huge success, gave a presentation to an audience I think it was in Florida, drawn from 26 countries. One person came up to her and said, "You are a natural." She said, "A natural." Would you consider then, she said to me, "Would you consider then training a cross-section or our whole vice president tier?" So that's how that started. So just following the thread, life presents, see how it fits.
And I love that as just an overarching I would take that as advice and a lesson, because there is so much to be said about opportunities that can present themselves and then overthinking it.
Exactly.
I am very much, I can look back into some of my experiences where it's a combination. Some things I was very bold and fearless. I didn't think about it at all. I just went, just go for it. And it had remarkable, wonderful outcomes that were beyond my expectations. And then other times it can be, I don't know, where life happens and perhaps one experience gets internalized as, oh, I was brave that one time and maybe I don't be as curious, and it's presenting itself, and how much we can just keep turning down these things and it become a pattern down the line. And
Exactly.
what I think is beautiful, you have maintained this element of openness and curiosity through a whole lifespan of your, it was like decades. We're often, I know I'm young-ish, younger. When I look at the teen years and the early in the 20s, where it's this vigor of, I'm going out there, anything can happen, anything is possible. And then sometimes there's this, okay, I've had some knockdowns and maybe I tried that and it wasn't as welcoming. I got knocked down and bruised a little bit. Maybe I'm going to be a little more careful. And there can be a closing off and a sense of, I got hurt last time or it didn't really work out that great. So I'm just going to maybe, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know if it's like shrinking, but protecting and staying in the comfort zone would be probably more digestible language, is being in a place that's familiar and
Yeah.
not continuing this expansion. So I'm birthing a question out of this. What would you say as an advice on how to maintain that openness and curiosity if you've lived through some things?
Yes, exactly. Well, the first place I would say that comfort, in certain ways, familiarity and creativity and amazing learning do not generally coexist. It's when we dare just to push the edge a little bit. And yes, as one would say, but I failed. No, I learned.
Perspective.
I learned. Yeah. And a good friend of mine who's a coach, athletic coach, and now coaches people in business and so forth. And he would say to any of his clients when they hit the wall, whatever that looks like, he would say, "How can this be the best thing that could have happened to you today?" It's all about cognitive therapy. We change the perception. We change everything about it. Yeah. And there are many times when I've slapped my face on the pavement, for sure, but I've also seen heaven. And I think that those two extremes coexist without living with daring somehow, not recklessly,
Hmm.
No, something presents, you say, gee, that's fascinating. At least I should try it. And we'll see. And something may come up that's specific to that or related to it in any way, tangential to that. But nevertheless, we've stretched a bit. We've just pushed ourselves out of that comfort zone and availed ourselves of an opportunity that otherwise we would have never entertained.
I have to know. I was like, was this something that you learned in your formative years, or was that always, were you raised with a growth mindset that's been coined these days? I'm very familiar with that book and how it can be just that shift. It's small, but monumental in what it can do in degrees of how your life trajectory goes, whether we choose to be open-minded and curious and it's not failing. It's, I guess my dad would say failing forward, as in I'm learning, right? So I'm curious, is that something that you developed through your studies, or is that something that you were raised in that environment?
I don't think I was actually raised in that environment. I found we have our parents and then we have our tribe. So there were people who came into my life who did have that, we'll say, mindset. They didn't articulate it as such, but they modeled it by their own behavior. And I think just by nature, I've always been curious. What do things
Mm,
feel like? And why not try?
why not?
Yeah, why not? And it's been amazing to that extent. Certainly I've scraped myself on the pavement. Who hasn't? And those in some ways have been the best learning moments by far.
Absolutely. I'm
Mhm.
just doing a reminder. And when I talk to my nieces and nephews, I just think about when we're young, could you imagine when we're learning how to walk, and if we decided, I've tried that before, I fell over, I think I'm good with crawling. Yeah, I'm quite comfortable with staying here, and how that somehow is, that can, old children continue to keep trying. We have this innate desire and curiosity of, I can do this. I need to just keep trying and it will happen. Determination and
Right.
how to maintain that. I think that's a very healthy thing. Is just probably a question of why not? What's the worst that could happen? And
Mm.
what do I have to gain? Probably just the flipping the coin of,
Yeah, exactly. And it's in the questions we ask. I love that from Byron Katie. We confront a certain situation and nothing has meaning until we give it meaning. I
mm,
feel that very strongly. So there's a situation and we say, is this the truth? That's my first question. Second question is, how do I know it's the truth? And the third question is, what if it were not the truth?
mm,
Very simple and yet in many ways provocative. So just that nothing has meaning until we give it meaning. And we could look at our current situation in the world. We could say, oh my God, this pandemic and now the global collapse and there's violence and all. Oh, it's horrible. Humanity is just collapsing and falling apart in ways that we've never seen before. It is catastrophic. Or we could say, oh, maybe there's an opportunity to do things much differently.
mm.
But we really have to now.
Very much agree.
Opportunity and crisis, always.
Yes, absolutely. So perspective really is key. And that's the one thing we do have control over, is how we choose to approach, react, or respond, and being able to think. I think we're the only species that really can contemplate that on certain extremes and interpreting that information. And what we want to do is as a reaction, a response, thoughtfully be like, okay, is this serving me? What were you said your questions? Is this true?
Yeah.
Is this
How do
real?
I know it's true? And what if it were not true?
What if it were not true? Yeah.
Yeah.
Empowering questions. That's beautiful. Can you share an anecdote, memorable, something from your career in television and radio broadcasting that taught you some important lessons about communication and connection?
Oh my. Boy, there'd be many examples of that. Yeah. I would like to talk about a time when I had the pleasure to meet and to work with Victor Borge, who was a pianist and a comedian. And we were doing a concert in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Hmm.
He was 91 years old. He had a heart pacemaker. He was so brilliant as a comedian. He was so quick and so forth. And I asked him a question that I had wanted to ask, or that I had considered for much of my life. And I thought this was a wise person, highly intelligent, very articulate. The question was, what is the secret of longevity? To which he said, oh, if it were, how would I know if it were a secret? And then I said, may I ask a different question? He said, by all means. It's a question. What is the secret of, no, what is the essence of living long well? And he said, keep something of your childhood for all your life. I thought that was profound.
Hmm.
Yeah, that for sure was that was an amazing moment. Something just came up so for example, the Vancouver Symphony in 1980 had the largest subscription audience in the world. And then with a confluence of, we'll say, unfortunate events, they went through a downward spiral. There
Mhm.
was a strike. They were shut out of their concert hall for 18 months. Then they hired a music director, perhaps who didn't have the right chemistry with the audience. Very good musician, no question, but there is a certain thing of chemistry and so forth. And it just so happened that I was on the podium the night that they declared that they were going to shut their doors. And the press assumed that I was a spokesperson for the orchestra, which I was not. I was just a guest. I happened to be there at the time. And so they came to me and said, what do you think of this? And I said, I think it's a golden opportunity. And one person who's taking notes of my comments said, how can you be so crass? Look at these people. The musicians are crying. This is it. No. And I hadn't planned to say anything. I said, I believe that this is an opportunity to revisit, refine, and rebuild. Really? So just that spontaneity in the moment, it's something that came through me rather than,
Mhm.
and I thought, yeah. And what do you know? We did some amazing things, not just no, the whole group of people pulled together and we did things in very unusual ways to capture the audience interest and rebuild that corporate confidence and community ownership of the Vancouver Symphony. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful.
Could you share maybe one or two of those unusual ways to capture I'm curious. I'm curious because I
Well,
mean,
exactly. Well, exactly. Because my sense was, and people on our board agreed, that we in the orchestra had become a little bit too exclusive, a little bit too elitist, come to us and so forth. Vancouver's an outdoor city. So how do we bring the music to the people? That was the
right.
question. And we started some amazing summer concerts. The orchestra collapsed, I think it was 1988 in January, and we went through proposal of bankruptcy and all that kind of thing, restructured the organization, and then had our emergence. And so one of these concerts, I went to the board and I said, let's take a concert and do a concert on top of Whistler Mountain. Really? But no one will come. I think we could get them to come. It's just about maybe some interesting marketing. So I approached this marketing firm at the time, and we decided to fly a full-size grand piano from Falls Creek, downtown Vancouver, over the water for insurance reasons, and perch it up on top of Whistler Mountain. It made the national news. People saw, what is that of all things? And what do you know, 6,800 people sat on bales of hay and listened to a classical music concert as a result. And it's all, Sun Tzu wrote The Art of War. So the art of war is the art of deception. That's the basis of certainly military strategy, but also of humor. Catch people off guard, come from a place that they're not expecting. And
Mm.
we were. They have no preconditioned response to that, and they will show up in unusual ways. And that's exactly what we did. So that was an interesting moment. That was a learning moment also. How do you capture people not in their lane? Something that comes from the other side. Oh my God, never thought of.
Was that an inspiration you just quoted with a book with the art of war? Or is that something you were drawing from as you were going into a well of how do we reinvent this? Is that
Not consciously. I've had a lot of interest in Chinese philosophy, the Tao Te Ching, the I Ching, and so forth, and Sun Tzu, the Art of War. Learned a lot, but it wasn't that I was directly applying that learning. We just had that feeling we have to do something differently. We have to
Mm.
capture their attention in a way that they haven't been captured before. So what could that look like? How can we disrupt the old pattern so that people just stand back and go, God, isn't that fascinating? Never thought of that.
I suppose that comes back full circles. What the questions we ask, we're always going to get an answer. So
Always.
the power really is in the quality of the questions we are asking ourselves on a daily basis. And whether when we make a decision, hey, I'm going to stay open, there's always going to be an opportunity. If you're coming from a place, there's an opportunity for growth, for connection, for some, okay, then you ask a question, how can we make this better? it's that glass half full, glass half empty with approach. You're always going to get a response. It's just which side do you want to be on?
Exactly. And we use the word discovery. In other words, it's already there. We just take the cover off. And it's all about the question. Arguably, in the time of Leonardo, one of the most, perhaps the most brilliant mind in our Western history, who first person to do dissection, invented helicopters and submarines and catapults and all kinds of things. Anyway, in his time, there were quasars, pulsars, black holes, string theory. It was all, but no one asked the question to uncover what was already there.
Mm-hmm.
It's the precision of the question that will be met precisely with the response that we catalyze, that we engender.
Now, you are a communications coach, and I am very curious how you integrate some of those philosophies into your approach as how to be more compassionate in how one uses their voice. You're an executive coach in the government, you said in the private sector. Could you shed a little light on that and your approach? Maybe some of the lessons that you drew from your conducting or orchestral years, and I suppose you draw from all of that, but feel free, however you want to draw from.
Yeah, exactly. I think to engage anyone in any relationship, it would seem to me that it's a three-part process. So first of all, what is the interest of the person to whom we're speaking? What is most important to them? Their hopes, their dreams, their goals, their culture, their pain points, whatever it is. And to take the time to investigate that. In many ways, we have to listen to be heard and follow to lead. So and we will see that they will generally put their attention to and express that which is most important to them. So to pay attention to that. And then from that place, when we identify that, then we bring our offering. Could be guidance, counsel, wisdom, encouragement, support, professional counsel, whatever it's going to be. As it fits like a glove to their hand. It must be tailored to them. That they say, oh, you really get me. And you're here to support me, not to advance your own agenda, whatever that would be. And I think any relationship is anchored when they have a perceived benefit, when we serve their interest, whatever that looks like. But it starts always with the other person. What's important to them? And I think when we sincerely acknowledge that, then they feel seen, they feel heard, and they will respond. Again, we have to listen to be heard, understand to be understood. And to bring to any conversation no assumption, no bias or judgment, just a place of neutrality, and ask an open-ended question. And then to show up authentically, whatever that means, to show up absolutely authentically, and to be responsive, not reactive.
Agreed. So this is could you explain a little more of your methodology? I love what you're sharing with me so far. It's like, how do you coach leaders to use their voices powerfully and compassionately? I know that's something on your website. I'm just curious, could you delve into a little more of the details of that? Or
Absolutely.
Something?
First, I think in anything, we first have to know who we are.
Hmm.
Because the story that we tell about ourselves to ourselves is going to be conveyed in every communication that we have with another person.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, to Rabbi Hillel said, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm not for another, what am I? And if not now, when? So it starts with self. Shakespeare saying, above all things, let thy own self be true. It's not selfish. We're investigating, what are my values? What are my beliefs? How am I showing up?
Mm-hmm.
In that investigation, can I be authentic with anybody else? From that space, when I would be coaching someone for example, in public speaking, then first thing we would say is, so in terms of the message itself, first thing is, what is my motivation? What is my motivation? People will hear our words, but they will feel our meaning. Oftentimes we're in a conversation, we say, the person is saying this, it just doesn't feel right to me.
Mm-hmm.
So to know our motivation. Second thing, who is my audience? What's important to them? I'm here to serve them and not just to overwhelm them with my own agenda, whatever that looks like. The next thing, what is the goal in measurable terms? and to mutual benefit. The next one would be, what is my intention? It has to be that any presentation, any speech has got to be somehow provocative. It excites the voices of other people that they want to participate. They want to get involved. They feel, my God, this is a catalyst that really excites my energy. It ignites my passion. I'm into it. And finally, then, what is the essence of my message in 15 words or fewer? If we can't say it simply, we really don't know what we're talking about. We can't say it simply. And then I believe that in any speech, and I've coached people who spoke to the Senate of Canada or the Energy Board of Canada and so forth. I think any presentation, won or lost in the first 25 seconds. What do we have to accomplish? One, go right to the essence of the message that someone says, oh, now I know what they're talking about. Not wading in directly. What? Oh, great. Next thing, connect with the interests of the audience. Why is this important to them? I'm serving them. Then capture their fascination to say, you've got me hooked. Tell me more. Give them the main headings you're going to be covering in that presentation. We're going to touch on this and this along the way. So they're in a state of anticipation. What's coming next? I'm holding my attention.
Amazing.
And then just fill that all out and provide detail along the way to that. And then there's a certain transitional moment, a catalyst, when they will change their perception based on what we've said. And we anchor that moment when they perceive a benefit accruing to them for having adapted to that new way of thinking. And then we conclude with the way that we began. And so it's a very neat package in that way. I think in any kind of communication, it's essential to be vulnerable. And that may sound simplistic. Oh, we hear about vulnerability and leadership and so forth. But what does that actually mean? To be emotionally available, to be at ease without being able to control the outcome. Things may show up in ways that we could have never possibly imagined. What does that look like? What does that look like? There's a man, Michael Gelb, who wrote a book called How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci. And he gave seven practices that Leonardo would have used by his assessment. And they're all in Italian. And so the first was arte scienze. So there's art and science and art. That was fundamental to Leonardo's thinking. Anyway, going down the list, there's one that's sfumato. Fumare in Italian, to smoke. Fumato, smoked. Sfumato, up in smoke. What does that, in that particular context, what does that mean? For Leonardo, it meant the willingness to embrace ambiguity, uncertainty, and confusion. Now we're in a place of learning. So to say, I don't know, good. Now I can learn.
I'm probably not going to quote this correct. I've enjoyed a lot of books, especially in my early 20s, that questions were life and answers were death was, I think, summarizing as to assume that everything you've sensed arrived is not a great place to continue. There needs to be an emptying, or sometimes what can feel like absolute chaos and losing control is a birthing place for creation and for expansion, which seems to be where I'm interpreting some of what you're saying, is that to assume that we know, but if we're coming to a place of what someone's presenting something new, well, to lean into that, then that's good. That's a sense of you're about to go into another state of evolving into something bigger, or potentially just more.
Well, in a variety of spiritual practices, when we get to a place where we say, I don't know, now I'm ready. I don't know, now I'm ready. It was even Socrates said, one thing I know surely is I know nothing.
Yes.
Okay. Now his mind is ready. William Blake, without contraries, no progressive. So we have opposition. Oh, this is what I believe. This is what I've always done it this way. This has been my practice. This is my reliable method. Really? What if that doesn't work at all anymore? Without contraries, no progressive. So it's in the opposition. Oh, gee, never thought of that before. And yes, there would be a feeling of uncertainty, perhaps, I don't know, angst, when we're pushed out of that comfortable habitual rut. But that golden moment, it's a golden moment to sit back and say, gee, I have to look at things differently here. I can't just be on automatic. It's a fabulous situation. And we think of the times that we've learned the most in our lives are always in the hardest times, always the hardest times.
Yeah. Well, after it could be easier said than done. It can feel that it's a great place to stay. I finally have element of sense of control. I know what's coming next, but that's also, yeah, I'm not a huge fan when it says like you step outside of your comfort zone. I prefer to use the word I'm expanding it. So I'm just growing. I'm not trying to get away from it. I'm trying to become more something to that limitless element in nature. Yeah. I'm curious. We've delved into so much. I'm gleaning, I'd say people are listening, vulnerability being a very key thing and being able to show up authentically and having an emotional intelligence, being open, not assuming that we know everything, listening, being a very key element component for being more effective in communication. First,
Yeah.
listen to be understood, and then
Yeah.
to move forward.
I think in that deep listening practice, first of all, to be in that space centered in oneself. And I think so few people are present these days. And so one would say, how can you be present? There was a survey taken which would demonstrate that the average, what would you call that, attention span went from 12 seconds to 8 seconds since the year 2000. Amazing. So that short. So first place, how are we present? Because that will be modeled in the person to whom we're speaking, or at least we're inviting that state. I think do that with the breath. Find your resting heartbeat. Breathe in through the nose to a count of 4, out through the mouth like blowing out a candle, and to a count of 4. And just staying in that place, get really centered in your body, focus, because we want to listen with the totality of who we are, what we see, what we feel, the level of energy, the quality of voice, the totality of what's being presented to us. And when we're centered in ourselves and in our body, then we can really connect with that and be sympathetic to that altogether. So important.
Absolutely. I'm imagining anybody who's going to be listening to this is going to be taking a breath in that moment. Like, what
Why not?
thing was I not breathing? I think about the moment I word breathe, like,
Yeah,
I being
exactly.
present, am I holding? We have so many things that are in our digital diet, I'd say these days, where are pulling our attention continuously, that it can rob us from being able to be in the moment. And
Right.
I love those practices of it's as simple as just taking a minute, taking a beat, and taking a nice deep breath and being here and focusing on that. And it can recalibrate to be in a place of centered energy to then venture forward in whether it's connecting on a deeper level with one to one or one to many. And I'm curious. I talk about this as the bravery path. I love having deep conversations with different individuals of other walks of life and their expertise and gleaning their insights on that. I think there is an element of courage in being able to step into being allowing oneself, giving permission to be vulnerable and being able to. Would you concur with that? Could you? Because I'm thinking of people who are going, this all sounds really great, but I'm shy or I'm nervous about talking to other people or how I want to put myself out there more. You've done a lot of coaching in this arena, especially fear of public speaking I think it's the number one. People would rather be in the casket than give the eulogy. Could you lean? I've heard that. And you know what? I'm curious what you would say as an advice to somebody that is just maybe in the beginning stages, that they have a deep desire, they want to be able to be more confident in their communication skills. What would you say?
In terms of communication, there are two elements. It would always be the person to whom I'm serving.
Hmm.
That's my primary hint. And then also what I'm saying, what I'm conveying must be in a spirit of generosity. I'm offering this for your consideration. I'm not here to impose it. I have no expectation. I have no agenda to that. I'm just offering it. It's a gift. And I'm, in terms of my purpose in all of this, I'm courageous. And what is the etymology of that? Courage, core. I'm speaking from my heart. I might feel fear, Susan Jeffers wrote a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. That fear actually excites something in us. It shows us to be real. We're alive. We're present. Yeah, we're scared, of course. And we bring that forth in a spirit of generosity, whatever that looks like. And it's there to serve. So that would be definitely one thing.
I just need to pause on that. That just brought up a well of emotion for me. I appreciate you breaking that down and say, what is courage? Getting to your core. And that is, I think that is something that anyone, as far as leaning into, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yes.
No one, anyway, it can be modeled. Often people will think, wow, they're natural. They're up there and they're not feeling anything but fear. This is so easy for them. But anyone who's listening to this is like to understand that you already have everything that you need within you. Just giving yourself the permission, the core of being able to just to step into, here I am, because your voice deserves to be heard.
Yes.
That you have everything to gain and nothing really to lose if you are actually offering from that place of, I think that generosity said is a gift.
Absolutely. And we're speaking authentically indeed. And it is that offering to someone else. The speech is all about, or the presentation is about them. It's not about me. This is not self-justification. I'm bringing, yes, an authentic point of view indeed, but I'm offering it. I'm not imposing it. I'm not driving it forward. I'm just offering it. That there's a connection between the two of us. And maybe there's a learning here that we've never before contemplated, something that neither one of us has ever experienced. How wonderful is that? And to come without assumption or judgment or bias, any prejudice of any kind, just says, yeah. So when we're standing in front of the room, even in terms of our body language is not this as the public speaker. Oh, look at me, I'm having a great hair day, but rather, how can I serve you? I'm looking out. I'm the bearer of the witness. I'm offering it to you. I'm offering it.
I think that is such a key thing. You are probably the third person over this past week I've been listening to who to share with their message of come from a place of a heart-centered service. Because when we take ourselves out of the equation, whenever we feel a self-pity or pity party, or I'm not enough or whatever it is, take your attention off yourself and go, what can I do for someone else? And automatically there's this transfer, there's a shift in energy. And the courage just comes naturally. I think that actually starts to dissolve the feelings of what could happen, what are all the worst, and it becomes more of just this beautiful exchange where, yeah, when I think of the energy transference, if someone is feeling, oh, you're here to serve me, then that natural response is going to be then normally this element of gratitude, which then fills up your cup. And then it's just this beautiful exchange. And we're now growing and expanding, going, wow, that wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. And it turned out to be something so much more elevated and beautiful.
Well, we think about fear is about self. It's projection. We say false evidence appearing real. Then why are we afraid? Again, going right back to ego. We're afraid because we're dependent on approval and we dread disapproval and judgment. So in other words, we're giving, so to say, all of our power, all of our worth is externally defined and driven. Rather, I'm just offering this. I'm just the vehicle through which it is coming. I'm not an entity. I'm not the point of focus. The offering, the gift, the message is everything. I'm offering it to you. Maybe it's some value. I would be delighted to hear how you would respond to that and what we may learn together through this agency. What does that look like? So it's, yes, in all the body language, it's not about me. I'm just the vehicle of the message. I'm just offering it to you.
It's beautiful. I've really enjoyed this interaction. There's so much to glean. I'm going to listen back. Right. So much. I appreciate your insights. I am curious. I always love to ask everyone, what are 3 books for inspiration?
The first for me would be Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Hmm.
Viktor Frankl was a Jewish Viennese psychiatrist. He was incarcerated in Auschwitz. And in the worst of human depravity and torture and torment, he had a life-changing experience. And that is that he saw a few people in Auschwitz who were actually given to humor, not ridicule, sardonic humor or anything. No, humor, the real sense of the word, the real meaning of the word, seeing the folly in human behavior. And he came to the realization, that our ability to choose our attitude in any situation is our choice. It was Viktor Frankl who wrote in that book, it's not the pursuit of pleasure or the avoidance of pain that drives any of us. It's seeking meaning. So that would be one for sure. Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching, 84 pages of Chinese philosophy. What we resist persists. If you want to have something, you've got to be prepared to let go of it. Other things we get to keep are the things we give away. Phenomenal philosophy. The last, I think, would either be the Tibetan Book of the Dead or Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Again, really looking inward, whatever that looks like.
I've got a few more to add to my reading list. That's awesome. This has been a really wonderful time. I really am grateful that you agreed to come on for an interview and share your expertise today. And I hope everyone, you feel as inspired as I do. There's some, I think, beautiful words of wisdom and nuggets of knowledge in here to glean from, and opportunities for all of us to continue to grow and be a little braver. And it's already in us. So thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to be with you. Just feel I'm inspired by your openness, your curiosity, and also just the emotional and psychological safety that you provide. It's a beautiful attribute.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Have a beautiful afternoon, everyone. Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.